Okay. Today I wanted to do a video on like perspective on work. And I don't know if it's going to be helpful for you or not because I've thought about this a bit and it's going to be my experience with I followed up with what was going on at work after I retired. And I'm not sure if this is going to be able to help anyone. It was very enlightening for me though, but I don't know if it would have changed what I did. So let me give you a quick like a brief overview of what I did. So I worked for an investment bank and I wrote a lot of the software for the investment banking side of the house. So a lot of the software I wrote like, basically they were a small company. They started as a small company and they needed software to report revenue and just, revenue across different aspects, and the accounting people would put it in. Then I tied the system to the accounting system and was actually able to bring in actual revenue based on projects and things like that. And they loved the software. So I wrote that. That was basically me doing it myself. It was just an idea. It was nothing. And then I made an idea out of it. And then it went even further with they they had these humongous reports that would get delivered every Sunday to the C-level management, and they would look at it, and it was like a stack. It was a lot of reports. It was just, I mean, it was the same report cut like 15 million different times, different ways, and not simple. I had to write a bunch of C# programming for it. So basically, what I did was I wrote reporting software, I wrote data entry software. I wrote, and it was all web based stuff, and they used it. I was like a back end guy. So my life was pretty much about, at one point I had a team and then they laid people off and then they never hired other people. And eventually the software got older. And so it was all based on an open source stack. And it was great job security. Unfortunately, with job security comes calls because you're the only person. For a while there was three of us, and then the one person quit and they never hired another person. And the other person, they think they got laid off. And and then they had me writing some other same vein kind of stuff in a different system that was again a web-based system, but some real heavy duty like Excel, not Excel based, but it would generate Excel based reports that couldn't be done in other frameworks. So what ended up, and it was all revenue based, so it was very important. So what ended up happening was I would get calls on Friday. I would get calls throughout the week. Whenever a call would call, whenever my phone would light up, I'd just be like, oh, what is it now? And there was a couple of people that were my friends, but they were the primary users of the system, and they would, they'd be the ones that were like, hey Steve, we got a problem. And also I wrote stuff where all the bankers could come in and they could look at their revenue and stuff like that. So I would get banker calls and things like that. So it would get a bit stressful for me, especially as time went on, and I kind of realized the software it should have been, they should rewrite it, but they didn't want it. We weren't a software company, so they didn't want to rewrite it and they didn't want to spend the money. They had a couple of people coming in trying to do estimates on it. It was just a disaster. Ultimately, I rewrote pieces of it in a new technology, but we won't get into all that. So basically, that's my career. Um, so what was happening was I was hypercritical to a lot of the revenue stuff. And so what would happen is they would run the main reports. I mean, they'd run them throughout the week, but we're run on Friday evenings, so close of business Friday, they would start collecting all the estimates. Or they would have collected all the estimates throughout the week, and then the revenue would book and all this good stuff. And and so I was always on the edge. There was one point where I was on vacation and I had to work like 20 hours straight. I was working with a guy. I got a call at like, it was like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night. And I don't think we got it resolved. I guess it wasn't 20 hours, but it was a good 15 till like, I don't know, 2 o'clock. Or no, no, no. It was late morning, like 10 o'clock the next day, 11 o'clock when I finally got to go back to the beach. And then every night I would come home, even on vacations. I would specifically not bring my phone to the beach with me because I didn't want to be interrupted. And so I would get home, I would get back up from the beach like 4:30 and just be like, oh, I got to pick up my phone. Now, it didn't happen very often, but it was always there. Like that pressure on my back was always there. And the amazing thing is, there was a set of reports from different systems that I was pretty much responsible for, but they would have to balance. The revenue would have to balance, or they would question the report. The CEO would, and the CFO, and all that good stuff. So basically, what would happen is if something went wrong or if something was off balance, they would call me and be like, "Steve, we got to figure this out." I remember, Labor Day, I was helping my son move in. I'm moving out. I get a call saying, "Steve, we're out of balance by $5 million. What's wrong?" I mean, the reports were in the billions, but it it, in the big scope, it was like, "Well, what's $5 million out of a 20 billion?" And but it was $5 million. So the point of this was, it really I always had stress on top of me. There was never anyone to delegate to. Somebody would call me right away, and the reason I'm sharing this is because I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of people that feel this way. There's a lot of mid-level management guys that make big money, but all they do is basically pick up the phone and call the person who actually can do something about it. So I just got really frustrated and tired. And that's one of the primary reasons that left him. And they screwed me one year because of a stock trade that one of my kids did for like $150 because it was a financial firm. So anyhow, so let's get to this. So fast forward, I retire. I give him 2 months notice. I do, whatever. I think it was 80 hours, 100 hours worth of Zooms that are all recorded and put in their places. Had to my one person, I had to turn over to 3 different teams, like 8 different people, and so what happened was I ended up going to lunch like, well, it was 3 months later, but then even like a year and change later, I've been gone for about a year and a half. About a year later, I was good friends with these people, and so I called them up and I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Because I'd gone out to lunch with them like 3 4 months after. Oh yeah, and the other thing is, I had like oodles of projects stacked on me, and it was always like the project manager's like, "Are you done? Are you done? We said we'd give them this date. Uh, are you done yet?" I literally had like 2 years of projects booked ahead of me. Um, and so I ended up getting back together with them for lunch, and we hung out. Like there was like 5 of us. It was a good time. They said, "Oh, projects are falling behind. Things aren't balancing quite as well." And then about a year later, I was able to get on the phone with them because they usually go out to lunch like once a year. Like, "Steve will call you," and they ended up not going out to lunch. But I said, "Oh, Candy, if or not Candy, but if you want to get together, then I'd be more than happy to when you guys get together," because they were all good friends of mine. They weren't the source of the problem. And so I talked to her like a year later. And I said, "How's it going?" She's like, "Oh, things aren't balancing. Um, it's just all these projects that were supposed to get done, they're not getting done, and it's a mess." And and I guess I asked her. I said, "Well, what do you do when the report's out of balance?" And she said, "Oh, we just live with it." And that's what hit me is when I was there, projects couldn't be missed. Project deadlines went up to the top. Well, Steve said he was going to get this done. Why isn't it done? If a report didn't balance on a Friday night or a Saturday morning, I was called and I was expected to help them figure out why they didn't bounce. And it was hardly ever, if ever, a coding issue. It was always because somebody did something wrong. Um, and it kind of made me reflect a couple things. One, I probably would have worked longer if they had said to me, "You know what, Steve, we're not gonna we're these deadlines aren't really that important. You just do them at your pace, take your time, and you know what, those Friday night things when things misbalance, we're just going to wait until Monday." Now, would I have still retired? There's probably about an 80% chance I would have still retired because I'm the type of personality that still would have weighed on me. But what was amazing to me, and take this as you will, is that all this stuff was so important when I was there. And when I left, all of a sudden managers and stuff said, "Well, Steve's not here, so we don't have anyone to balance it." Or it was the offshore guys can't balance it, so they're going to need another 2 days to figure out what the problem is. And yes, people were pissed, but nobody is flying off the handle. Things are still working. Granted, they're probably not the most accurate, but so I don't know. I don't know what you want to do with that. Like, I don't know if I would have done anything different, to be honest with you. Because what am I going to do? Like, say, well, I'm just not answering the phone when you call, which I guess I could have, and then made them fire me. But that's not in my DNA. And honestly, I think a lot of people my age, that's not in our DNA. Like I take pride in my work. If I do something, I want to help people. I want to do the right thing. The problem was, is doing all that took its toll on me, and ultimately, I was just fed up and ready to go. So I don't know. Just think about that. I'm not giving you any answers. I was just an experience I had, and it's quite, it's going to be just a once in a lifetime experience because it's not like I'm going to retire more than once. Um, but it just kind of shows you, right? Like, when they know it's people who care and people that are attentive, they expect a higher level of performance. And then when you leave, all of a sudden it's like, well, he's gone, so I guess we're just going to have to settle for this. I'm like, well, and I'm thinking in my head, well, you know what, maybe had you given me a little more breathing room like you're giving these other people, maybe you wouldn't have had to deal with this. So back to the same thing. I heard a great word this morning from Heritage Foundation. They said it's called corporatism, not capitalism. There's a big difference. And it's so true. Like, corporatism is all about just maxing out profits and getting those C-level guys as much as they can make and keeping us grinding as long as we can for as little as we can. So, just keep that in mind. I don't regret a thing. I'm so happy I retired. It took about, I don't know, in total, maybe like 6 months to totally decompress. Now I barely remember it, but I'm still a little bitter about it, which tells you something. I think my kids got the right perspective, but they may have to work a little harder though. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much innovations are going to come under them when they get their job done and they're done. That whole system I wrote came when I had a couple hours. I had a few hours each day to kill, and so I said, this system sucks. Let's. They didn't even have a system. I'm like, let's just make something that works. So anyhow, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy the video. It's a perspective if you haven't retired yet. So take care.